I remember the smell of roasted turkey filling the house that Thanksgiving. My mom had been cooking since dawn, the way she always did, trying to make everything perfect. The dining room table was set with her good china, the kind she only brought out twice a year, Christmas and Thanksgiving. Golden light from the chandelier made everything look warm, almost safe, but I knew better. I had learned a long time ago that appearances meant nothing in this house. I was 24 years old, third year in the league, averaging 22 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds. My team was sitting at third in the Western Conference. The media called me a rising star. Endorsement deals were starting to come in. Sneaker companies wanted my name. Kids wore my jersey. But none of that mattered when I walked through the front door of my childhood home in Michigan. The moment I stepped inside, I was 12 years old again, trying to earn a nod of approval that never came. My father was already seated at the head of the table when I arrived. He didn't stand up to greet me, didn't smile. Just glanced at me over the rim of his whiskey glass and went back to his conversation with my uncle, talking about the old days when he played college ball, back when the game was real, back when players had heart. I heard that story 1,000 times. How he would have made it to the pros if it wasn't for the injury. How he was better than half the guys who made it. How the game had gone soft. My mom hugged me too tight the way she always did, like she was trying to shield me from something. My younger sister, Keisha, grinned and pulled me into the kitchen, whispering about how tense Dad had been all morning. She told me to just keep my head down, get through dinner, and leave. That was her survival strategy. Mine used to be the same. We sat down to eat. My father said grace. His voice was deep and steady, the kind of voice that demanded respect. He thanked God for the food, for the family, for the blessings we didn't deserve. He didn't mention me. Didn't acknowledge that his son, his oldest child, had flown in from the West Coast just to be there. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was used to it. The meal started quiet. My mom asked me about the season, and I kept my answers short. Good. We are doing good. Coach is solid. The team is clicking. She smiled and nodded, but I could see the worry in her eyes. She knew what was coming. My uncle asked about my stats, and before I could answer, my father cut in. He said stats don't mean anything if you don't have a ring. He said the game today was too easy, too soft, too friendly. He said back in his day, they played defense. They played physical. They didn't cry to the refs every time someone touched them. I nodded. I kept eating. I had learned not to argue. Then my cousin Marcus brought up the finals from last season. We had made it to the conference finals, lost in 7 games. It was the deepest playoff run our franchise had in over a decade. The city celebrated us like heroes even in defeat. But my father, he just shook his head. He said losing in the finals is worse than not making it at all. He said it shows you don't have what it takes when it matters. He said champions are born, not made, and you either have it or you don't. I felt my jaw tighten. My hands gripped the fork a little harder, but I stayed silent. My sister tried to change the subject. She talked about her nursing program, about how she was top of her class, about the internship she just got at the children's hospital. My mom beamed. My father nodded once and said that was good, that at least someone in the family had discipline. The words hung in the air like smoke. At least someone. I forced myself to take another bite of turkey. It tasted like nothing. Then my uncle, trying to be helpful, said that I was doing great, that I should be proud, that not many kids from our neighborhood even make it to college, let alone the NBA. He said I was living the dream. My father laughed. Not a happy laugh. A bitter one. He looked directly at me for the first time that night, his eyes hard and cold, and he said, Thanksgiving is no place for losers. He said this table is for people who actually won something. He said maybe next year, if I ever figured out how to finish what I started, I could sit here and actually have something to be thankful for. The room went silent. My mom's fork clattered against her plate. Keisha stared down at her lap. My uncle looked away. I just sat there, staring at my father, feeling every word like a fist to the chest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and tell him everything I had sacrificed, every hour in the gym, every missed holiday, every relationship I ruined because I was chasing a dream he once had and never finished. I wanted to ask him why nothing I did was ever enough, why every achievement was met with a reminder of what I hadn't done yet. But I didn't say any of that. I didn't say anything. I just nodded slowly, set my napkin on the table, and stood up. My mom reached for my hand, but I pulled away gently. I told her the food was amazing. I told Keisha I would call her later. I looked at my father one last time, and he just stared back, daring me to say something, waiting for me to prove him right by losing my temper. I walked out of that house and got in my car. I sat in the driveway for 10 minutes, hands shaking, eyes burning. I didn't cry. I hadn't cried in front of him since I was 8 years old, and I wasn't about to start now. But something inside me cracked that night. Not broke, cracked. And through that crack, something else started to grow, something cold and sharp and focused. I drove back to the airport. I flew back to the city where my team was. I didn't go home. I went straight to the practice facility. It was late. The building was empty. I walked into the gym, turned on the lights, and stood at center court. The silence was so heavy I could hear my own heartbeat. I thought about my father's words. Thanksgiving is no place for losers. I thought about every time he looked at me like I was a disappointment, every time he compared me to players who had rings, every time he reminded me that almost doesn't count. I grabbed a ball from the rack. I started shooting, free throws, mid-range, threes. I shot until my shoulders burned, until my legs felt like concrete, until sweat soaked through my shirt and dripped onto the hardwood. I didn't miss, not once. Every shot went in. Swish after swish after swish. I stayed in that gym until the sun came up. I didn't go home. I didn't call anyone. I just worked. And in the silence, in the ache of my body and the emptiness of that arena, I made a promise to myself. I was going to win. Not for the fans, not for the media, not for the endorsements. I was going to win so I could go back to that house, sit at that table, and look my father in the eyes without feeling small. I was going to prove him wrong, or die trying. When I finally left the gym, the city was waking up. I walked to my car, got in, and sat there for a moment, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were bloodshot. My face was gaunt. I looked like someone who hadn't slept, but I also looked like someone who had found something. Purpose, rage, fuel. I started the engine and drove home. I showered, I ate. I went to practice that afternoon like nothing had happened. My teammates asked if I had a good Thanksgiving. I smiled and said, yeah, it was great. Coach asked if I was feeling okay. I told him I felt perfect. And I did. For the first time in a long time, I knew exactly what I was playing for. The season stretched out in front of me like a battlefield. 82 games, months of travel, of pain, of doubt. But I didn't care. I was ready. I had been waiting my whole life for this. Waiting to be good enough. Waiting to be seen. Waiting to matter. I was done waiting quietly. It was time to take what was mine. The weeks after Thanksgiving blurred together like a fever dream. Games came and went. Cities, arenas, hotel rooms, everything felt the same. But I wasn't the same. Something had shifted inside me. My teammates noticed it first. In practice, I stopped joking around. I stopped taking plays off. Every drill, every scrimmage, every shoot-around, I went at it like it was the finals. Coach pulled me aside one day and asked if everything was okay at home. I told him everything was fine. He didn't believe me, but he didn't push. He just nodded and said to keep it up. We went on a 6-game road trip in early December. Portland, Sacramento, Phoenix, Denver, Utah, Oklahoma City. We won 5 of 6. I averaged 31 points on that trip. The media started talking. Sports networks debated whether I was having a breakout year. Analysts said I looked different, more focused, more aggressive. They said I was playing like a man possessed. They didn't know how right they were. My phone buzzed constantly. Texts from my agent about new opportunities, messages from friends congratulating me, calls from reporters wanting interviews. I ignored most of it. The only person I wanted to hear from never called. My father's silence was louder than any crowd I played in front of. My mom called me every few days. She asked how I was doing. She said she was proud of me. She said my father watched every game, even though he never admitted it. She said he just didn't know how to show it, that he loved me in his own way. I told her I knew, but I didn't believe it. Love doesn't feel like that. Love doesn't cut you down at the dinner table in front of your family. Love doesn't wait for you to fail so it can say, "I told you so." Christmas came. I didn't go home. I told my mom I had games, which was true, but we had a 2-day break I could have used to fly back. I stayed in my apartment instead. I ordered takeout and watched film. I studied every defensive scheme we would face in January. I broke down every tendency, every weakness. My assistant coach, a guy named Ray, who had been in the league for 20 years, sent me a text on Christmas morning. It said, "You good, Rook?" I replied, "Yeah, just locked in." He wrote back, "I see you. Keep going. Don't lose yourself in it." I didn't respond. I wasn't trying to lose myself. I was trying to find myself. Or maybe I was trying to prove that I existed at all, that I mattered, that I wasn't just a disappointment in an expensive uniform. January came, and the grind got harder. The season is a war of attrition. Bodies break down. Minds get tired. The travel wears on you. Back-to-backs, 4 games in 5 nights, time zones blurring together. But I didn't slow down. I couldn't. Every time I thought about easing up, I heard my father's voice. Thanksgiving is no place for losers. So I played through a sprained ankle. I played through a bruised rib. I played through exhaustion so deep I felt like I was moving underwater. We were winning. That was all that mattered. By the All-Star break, we had the second-best record in the West. I was averaging 28 points, 7 assists, 5 rebounds. I made the All-Star team for the first time. The media called it a Cinderella story. They said I came out of nowhere. But I didn't come out of nowhere. I had been here the whole time. People just weren't paying attention. At the All-Star game, I ran into a veteran player named Curtis Williams. He was a champion, 3 rings, future Hall of Famer. We were in the locker room before the game, and he sat down next to me. He said, "You playing angry, young blood." I looked at him, confused. He smiled. It wasn't a mocking smile. It was knowing. He said, "I recognize it because I used to play angry too. Spent 10 years trying to prove my pops wrong. Won 2 championships doing it." He paused, looked me in the eye. He said, "But you know what? Even after I won, it didn't fix what was broken." He got up and walked away before I could respond. His words stayed with me. I didn't want to believe him. I told myself he was wrong. Winning would fix everything. Winning would make my father see me. Winning would make me whole. The second half of the season was brutal. Teams started game planning specifically for me. Double teams, trap defenses, physical play. Refs let a lot of contact go. I got knocked down hard in a game against Memphis. A defender undercut me on a layup, and I landed on my shoulder. The pain was instant and sharp. I stayed down for a minute, the crowd going silent. My teammates surrounded me. Coach ran onto the court. The trainer asked if I could move my arm. I could, barely. They wanted to take me out. I refused. I played the rest of the game. We won by 3. I scored 34 points. In the locker room after, my shoulder throbbing, ice pack strapped to it, one of my teammates, a guy named Jalen who had been in the league for 8 years, sat down next to me. He said, "Man, you trying to kill yourself out there?" I didn't answer. He said, "I get it. I've been where you are. Playing for someone who ain't even watching. Playing to prove something that can't be proved on a court." He leaned back, stared at the ceiling. He said, "Just make sure you know why you're doing this. Because if you don't, it'll eat you alive." I told him I knew exactly why I was doing this. He just nodded and walked away. March came. Playoff race tightened. Every game felt like life or death. We were battling for the second seed. Home court advantage mattered. I pushed harder. I played more minutes than anyone else in the league. Coach tried to rest me, but I convinced him I was fine. I told him I could handle it. The truth was I didn't know if I could. My body was breaking down, but my mind was sharper than ever. I was in a zone where pain didn't matter, fatigue didn't matter, only winning mattered. We clinched the second seed on the last day of the regular season. The city went crazy. Fans flooded the streets. Social media exploded. We were heading into the playoffs as one of the favorites. I was named second team All-NBA. My agent called, said endorsement deals were pouring in. He said I was about to be a household name. I thanked him and hung up. That night, alone in my apartment, I sat on my couch and stared at my phone. I thought about calling my father. Thought about telling him we made it. Thought about asking if he was proud. But I didn't. I knew what he would say. He would say making the playoffs isn't winning a championship. He would say, let me know when you actually do something that matters. So I didn't call. I just sat there in the dark, the city celebrating outside my window, and I felt more alone than I ever had in my life. The playoffs started a week later. First round, we faced the 7th seed. A scrappy team, young, hungry, nothing to lose. Everyone expected us to sweep them. We didn't. They took us to 6 games. I averaged 35 points in that series, but it wasn't pretty. I was forcing shots, playing selfish, trying to do everything myself. Coach yelled at me in a timeout during Game 5. He said, "You think you're out here by yourself? You think this is a one-man team?" I didn't answer. He said, "If you don't trust your teammates, we're not going anywhere." He was right. I knew he was right. But I didn't know how to let go. I didn't know how to trust anyone else to care as much as I did. Because to me, this wasn't just basketball. This was survival. This was proof that I mattered, that I existed, that I was more than the disappointment my father saw when he looked at me. We won Game 6, advanced to the second round, but I could feel something shifting in the locker room. My teammates were frustrated. They felt shut out. Coach was worried. He pulled me aside after the game. He said, "Son, I don't know what you're carrying, but you can't carry it alone. Not if you want to win this thing." I nodded. I told him I understood, but I didn't know if I did. Second round. We faced a team we matched up well against on paper. They had talent, but we had experience. We had me. At least that's what I thought. Game 1, I scored 42 points. We won by 15. Game 2, I scored 38. We won by 9. The media said I was unstoppable. They said this was my moment. They said a championship was inevitable. But Game 3, something broke. I don't know if it was my body or my mind or both. I was exhausted. Every step felt heavy. My shots weren't falling. I kept forcing it, trying to will my way through. We lost by 20. I shot 6 for 23. In the locker room after, I sat with my head in my hands, and for the first time all season, I wondered if my father was right. Maybe I didn't have what it took. Maybe I was just a loser pretending to be something more. Coach didn't say anything. He just put his hand on my shoulder and walked away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every missed shot, every mistake. My phone buzzed. A text from my mom. It said, "I'm praying for you, baby. I love you. You're going to be okay." I wanted to believe her, but I didn't know if okay was enough anymore. I didn't want okay. I wanted greatness. I wanted vindication. I wanted my father to look at me and see something worth loving. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but all I could see was his face at that Thanksgiving table, telling me I didn't belong. The series wasn't over. We still had a chance. But I knew the hardest part wasn't beating the other team. It was beating the voice in my head that sounded exactly like my father, telling me I would never be enough. Game 4 was in 2 days. We were down 2-1 in the series. The media narrative had shifted overnight. Suddenly, I wasn't unstoppable anymore. I was struggling. I was cracking under pressure. Sports talk shows debated whether I had what it takes to be a championship player. Former players said I needed to trust my teammates more. Analysts broke down film showing how defenses had figured me out. Social media was ruthless. Every missed shot became a meme. Every mistake became evidence that I was overrated. I stopped looking at my phone, stopped reading articles, stopped listening to anything outside the locker room, but the noise still got in. It always does. You can feel it in the way people look at you, the doubt, the pity, The quiet question nobody wants to ask out loud. Can he actually do this? Coach called a team meeting the morning of Game 4. We sat in the film room, lights dim, the previous game playing on the screen. He didn't yell. He didn't lecture. He just asked a simple question. Do we believe in each other? The room was silent. Then Jalen spoke up. He said, I believe in every man in this room, but we can't win if one man thinks he has to do it all. He looked directly at me when he said it, not angry, just honest. I nodded. I told them I heard them. I told them I would be better. But inside, I was drowning. I didn't know how to let go. I didn't know how to play any other way. Because if I wasn't carrying everything, if I wasn't trying to prove something every second I was on the court, then what was I even doing out there? Game 4 tipped off in our arena. The crowd was electric. They needed us to win. I needed us to win. The first quarter was a battle. Physical, intense. Every possession felt like a war. I forced myself to move the ball, to trust my teammates, and it worked. We got open shots. We got rhythm. By halftime, we were up by 8. In the locker room, Coach told us to keep doing what we were doing. He looked at me and nodded. I nodded back. Third quarter, they came out aggressive. They trapped me every time I touched the ball. 2 defenders, sometimes 3. I kicked it out. My teammates made shots. We extended the lead to 15. The arena was deafening. I could feel the momentum. For the first time in weeks, I felt like we were actually a team, like I wasn't alone. Then, with 4 minutes left in the third quarter, I drove to the basket. A defender met me at the rim. I went up strong and he hit me across the arm. Hard. I fell awkwardly, my knee twisting as I landed. The pain was instant, sharp and deep, radiating from my kneecap down to my ankle. I stayed on the floor. The whistle blew. The crowd went silent. The trainer ran out. He asked me where it hurt. I pointed to my knee. He pressed gently, and I winced. He asked if I could stand. I said yes. I got up slowly, testing my weight. It hurt, but I could walk. He wanted to take me out. I refused. He said, "You could make it worse." I said, "I don't care. Let me finish." Coach subbed me out at the next dead ball. I argued with him on the sideline. I told him I was fine. He said, "Sit down." I sat. I watched the rest of the third quarter with ice wrapped around my knee, my heart pounding, my mind racing. We held the lead, barely. By the start of the fourth, we were up by 9. Coach asked if I could go back in. The trainer said it wasn't a good idea. I said I could play. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. I checked back in with 8 minutes left. Every step hurt. Every cut, every pivot, every time I planted to shoot, my knee screamed. But I pushed through. We needed this game. I needed this game. With 2 minutes left, we were up by 4. They hit a 3. We were up by 1. I brought the ball up. They trapped me at half court. I passed to Jalen. He swung it to our shooting guard, Marcus. Open corner 3. He let it fly. Swish. We were up by 4 again. 30 seconds left. They missed. We got the rebound. Game over. We won. The arena erupted. My teammates mobbed me, but I could barely celebrate. My knee was throbbing. In the locker room, the trainer examined it more carefully. He said it was a sprain. Not severe, but not minor either. He said I needed to rest. Maybe sit out Game 5. I told him that wasn't happening. He said, "You're risking long-term damage." I said, "I'll deal with that later." Game 5 was 3 days later, on the road. My knee didn't get better. If anything, it got worse. I could barely walk the morning of the game. The team doctor examined me. He said the smart thing would be to sit out, let it heal, come back for Game 6 if necessary. I told him I was playing. He said, "This is your career we're talking about." I said, "This is my life we're talking about." I played. I shouldn't have. Every movement was agony. I tried to hide it, but you can't hide that kind of pain. My teammates saw it. The other team saw it. They attacked me relentlessly, drove at me, made me move laterally, made me defend. By the second quarter, I could barely run. Coach pulled me with 6 minutes left in the half. I sat on the bench, head in my hands, feeling like I had let everyone down. Halftime, I told coach to put me back in. He said no. I begged him. I told him I could fight through it. He said, "You can barely walk. How are you going to help us?" I didn't have an answer, so I sat. I watched the second half from the bench, helpless, as we fought and clawed but came up short. We lost by 7. Series tied 2-2. In the locker room after, nobody said anything. We just sat there, exhausted, frustrated, knowing we had let a chance slip away. I felt like it was my fault. If I had been healthy, if I had been better, we would have won. Jalen sat down next to me. He said, "It's not on you, man. We win as a team, we lose as a team." I nodded, but I didn't believe him. That night, alone in my hotel room, my knee elevated and wrapped in ice, I stared at the ceiling and thought about quitting. Not basketball. I could never quit basketball. But quitting this chase. This desperate need to prove something to a man who would never be satisfied. What was the point? Even if we won the championship, would it change anything? Would my father suddenly love me? Would he suddenly see me as worthy? Curtis Williams's words came back to me. Even after I won, it didn't fix what was broken. I grabbed my phone. I scrolled to my father's number. My thumb hovered over the call button. I wanted to hear his voice. I wanted him to tell me it was okay, that I was doing my best, that he was proud of me regardless. But I knew he wouldn't say that. So I put the phone down. Instead, I called my mom. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was warm and worried. She asked how I was doing. I told her I was okay. She said, "You don't sound okay." I stayed quiet. She said, "Baby, I know you're hurting, and I'm not just talking about your knee." I felt my throat tighten. She said, "You don't have to carry this alone. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You're already enough." I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't. Because if I was already enough, then why did I feel so empty? We talked for an hour. She told me stories about when I was little, before basketball, before my father's expectations became a weight I couldn't put down. She told me about the boy who used to laugh all the time, who played for the love of the game, who didn't care about winning or losing, who just wanted to be outside with his friends. She said, "That boy is still in there. You just have to let him breathe." When we hung up, I felt lighter, not fixed, but lighter. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. My knee throbbed. My heart ached. But somewhere, buried beneath all the pain and pressure and fear, I felt something else. A small flicker of hope. Maybe I didn't have to do this alone. Maybe I didn't have to be perfect. Maybe I just had to be present. Game 6 was back in our arena, win or go home. The building was packed. The energy was suffocating. My knee was heavily taped. The doctor gave me a painkiller injection before the game. He said it would help, but it wouldn't last the whole game. He said, "You've got maybe 3/4 before the pain comes back full force." I said, "Then I better make those 3/4 count." The game started, and I felt like myself again. The pain was dull, manageable. I moved the ball, trusted my teammates, played within the offense. And it worked. We built a lead, 10 points, 15, 20. The crowd was roaring. We were clicking on all cylinders. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I was just playing basketball. And it felt good. It felt right. By the fourth quarter, the lead was still comfortable. 18 points with 6 minutes to go. That's when the painkiller wore off. The pain came back, sharp and sudden, like someone driving a knife into my kneecap. I grimaced, tried to push through. Coach saw it. He called timeout. He asked if I could keep going. I said yes. He said, "We're up big. I can sit you." I said, "Please don't." He left me in. And for those final 6 minutes, I played through the worst pain I had ever felt on a basketball court. But we won. We won by 14. Series tied 3-3. Everything came down to Game 7. In the locker room, my teammates celebrated, but I just sat on the floor, back against the wall, knee screaming, knowing that in 2 days I would have to do it all over again. One more game. Everything on the line. Winner moves on. Loser goes home. I thought about my father. I thought about Thanksgiving. I thought about every word he ever said that made me feel small. and I realized something. I wasn't playing for him anymore. I was playing for the boy my mom talked about, the one who loved the game before it became a battleground. I didn't know if we would win Game 7, but I knew I would leave everything I had on that court, not to prove I was worthy, but because I finally remembered why I started playing in the first place, because I loved it. The day before Game 7, I didn't touch a basketball. Coach told us to rest, to recover, to get our minds right. I stayed in my apartment with the curtains drawn, knee elevated, ice on, trying to quiet the storm inside my head. My phone was off. I didn't want to hear from anyone. Didn't want the pressure, the advice, the expectations. I just wanted silence. But silence has a way of making you confront things you've been running from. I sat there in the dark, and all I could think about was my father. Not the man who sat at the head of the table on Thanksgiving. Not the man who criticized every move I made. But the man I remembered from when I was 6 years old, teaching me how to shoot in the driveway, his hands guiding mine, his voice patient and kind. That version of him felt like a ghost now. Something that existed once but disappeared so gradually I didn't notice until it was too late. I wondered when it changed. When did I stop being his son and become his project? His second chance? His unfinished dream? Maybe it was when I got good. When coaches started noticing me. When scouts started showing up to my games. Maybe that's when the pressure started. When love became conditional. When nothing I did was ever quite enough because he needed me to be what he couldn't. My mom called in the evening. I had turned my phone back on to set an alarm and her name lit up the screen. I answered. She asked how I was feeling. I told her I was ready. She said, "I know you are, baby." Then she paused. She said, "Your father is watching tomorrow." I didn't say anything. She said, "He watches every game. You know that, right?" I said, "Yeah, I know." She said, "He's just stubborn. He doesn't know how to say he's proud." I said, "Mom, I can't think about that right now." She said, "I understand. Just know that whatever happens tomorrow, I love you. Win or lose, you're still my son, and I'm proud of who you are." I felt my eyes burn. I told her I loved her too. We hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing, feeling everything. That night, I dreamed I was back in the driveway, 6 years old again, shooting on that crooked hoop my dad installed. He was there, rebounding for me, telling me to follow through, to keep my elbow in. In the dream, I kept missing. Every shot clanged off the rim. And every time I missed, he got quieter, more distant, until finally he just walked away, leaving me alone in the dark with a ball in my hands and no idea what I was supposed to do with it. I woke up in a cold sweat. My heart was pounding, my knee was throbbing. I checked the time. 4 a.m, game day. I got out of bed and stood at the window, looking out at the city. Streetlights glowing, buildings silent. Somewhere out there, thousands of people were sleeping, dreaming, living lives that had nothing to do with basketball. And here I was, carrying the weight of something I couldn't even name. I thought about Curtis Williams. I thought about what he said. Even after I won, it didn't fix what was broken. Maybe he was right. Maybe winning wouldn't change anything between me and my father. Maybe the distance between us was too wide, too old, too deep. But I had come too far to turn back now. If this was all I had, this game, this moment, this one chance to prove something to myself, if not to him, then I was going to take it. I got to the arena 6 hours before tip-off. The building was empty except for security and a few staff members. I walked onto the court, the lights still dim, the seats vacant and waiting. I stood at center court and closed my eyes. I listened to the silence. I let it fill me. This was my sanctuary. This was the one place where everything made sense, where effort equaled results, where pain had purpose, where I could be more than the sum of my failures and disappointments. I shot around for an hour, slowly, carefully, testing my knee. It hurt, but it was manageable. The trainer had said if I made it through warm-ups, if the adrenaline kicked in, I might be able to play through it. Might. That word hung over everything. But I didn't have a choice. This was Game 7. This was everything. My teammates started arriving. One by one, they filtered into the locker room, faces tight, eyes focused. Nobody said much. We all knew what was at stake. Coach gave a short speech. He said, "We've been through hell to get here. Now we finish it." He looked at each of us. He said, "I believe in every single man in this room. The question is, do you believe in each other?" We nodded. We did. For the first time all season, I truly believed we could do this together. The arena filled up. The noise was deafening. Fans screaming, drums pounding, the energy so thick you could taste it. I stood in the tunnel, waiting for our introduction, my heart racing, my knee taped and braced, my mind clear. This was it. One game, 48 minutes. Winner advances to the conference finals. Loser goes home. They called my name. I ran out onto the court. The roar of the crowd hit me like a wave. I looked up into the stands. Thousands of faces blurred together, and for a split second, I wondered if he was watching. If somewhere, in a living room in Michigan, my father was sitting in his chair, whiskey in hand, waiting to see if I would finally prove him wrong or confirm what he always believed. The game started fast and brutal. They came out aggressive, physical, daring the refs to call fouls. We matched their intensity. Every possession was a fight. Every rebound was contested. I moved the ball, got my teammates involved, played smart. But my knee was screaming. Every cut, every plant, every time I pushed off to drive, it felt like fire shooting up my leg. I gritted my teeth and kept going. By halftime, the game was tied, 48-48. In the locker room, Coach told us to keep grinding, keep trusting each other. The trainer pulled me aside. He asked if I could make it. I said yes. He said, "Your knee is swelling. If you keep playing on it like this, you could tear something." I said, "If I sit, we lose." He shook his head but didn't argue. The third quarter was a war. Neither team could pull away. We'd go up by 4, they'd tie it. They'd go up by 3, we'd tie it. My knee was barely holding together. I couldn't explode anymore. Couldn't blow by defenders. So I adjusted. I played slower, smarter, using angles and footwork instead of speed. I found open teammates. I hit big shots when we needed them, and somehow, we stayed in it. Entering the fourth quarter, we were down by 2. 12 minutes left in our season. I looked at my teammates. Jalen, Marcus, our center, Big Mike. Guys I had fought with all year, guys I had pushed away because I thought I had to do it all alone. And now, in the biggest moment of our lives, I needed them more than ever. We came out of the timeout, and something clicked. We moved the ball like we had all season, crisp passes, open shots, trusting each other. Marcus hit a 3. Jalen drove and finished through contact. Big Mike grabbed an offensive rebound and put it back. We went on a 10-2 run. Suddenly, we were up by 6 with 8 minutes to go. But they didn't quit. They clawed back, hit tough shots, got to the free throw line. With 3 minutes left, the game was tied again. The arena was shaking. My knee felt like it was going to buckle, but I couldn't stop. Not now. Coach called timeout. He drew up a play. It was designed for me to get the ball at the top of the key, attack, make a decision, pass or shoot. He looked at me and said, "Trust yourself. Trust your teammates. We got this." We ran the play. I got the ball. 2 defenders collapsed on me. I kicked it to Marcus in the corner, wide open. He hesitated for a split second and I screamed at him. "Shoot it." He let it fly. The ball hung in the air. The arena held its breath. Swish. We were up by 3. They came down and missed. We got the rebound. I brought it up slowly, milking the clock. 24 seconds, 20, 18. I passed to Jalen. He swung it to Mike at the elbow. Mike found me cutting back door. I caught it, took 1 dribble, and went up for a layup. A defender met me at the rim. Contact. I put it up softly off the glass. It rolled around the rim once, twice, and dropped in. And 1. The place exploded. I made the free throw. We were up by 6 with a minute left. They scored quickly. We were up by 4. 30 seconds left. They fouled Jalen. He made both. Up by 6. They hit a 3. Up by 3. 15 seconds. They fouled me. I walked to the line, my knee barely supporting my weight, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I looked up into the crowd. I thought about my father. I thought about Thanksgiving. I thought about every moment that led me here. And then I let it all go. I took a deep breath, bent my knees, and shot. Swish. Up by 4. They called timeout. 10 seconds left. I made the second free throw. Up by 5. They inbounded, raced down court, threw up a desperation 3. It clanged off the rim. The buzzer sounded. We won. We were going to the conference finals. My teammates rushed the court. We collapsed into a pile, screaming, crying, laughing. The crowd was going insane. Confetti fell from the ceiling. I lay on the floor, staring up at the lights, feeling nothing and everything all at once. We did it. We actually did it. In the locker room, chaos. Guys spraying champagne, music blasting, reporters everywhere. Coach pulled me aside, tears in his eyes, and hugged me tight. He said, "I'm proud of you, son. Not just for tonight, for everything." I nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Later, after the celebration died down, I sat alone in front of my locker, phone in hand. I stared at my father's number. Part of me wanted to call, wanted to hear his voice, wanted him to say he was proud. But another part of me, the part that had been growing all season, the part that was learning to stand on its own, knew that I didn't need his approval anymore. I had proven something tonight. Not to him, to myself. I put the phone away, I got dressed. I walked out of the arena into the night, my knee throbbing, my body exhausted, my heart full. We had won. But the journey wasn't over. The conference finals were ahead. And after that, if we kept winning, the finals. But for tonight, I let myself feel it. The joy. The relief. The quiet pride of knowing I had fought through hell and come out the other side. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if my father was proud or if he ever would be. But I knew one thing for certain. I was proud of myself. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. We swept the conference finals. 4 games. 4 wins. I don't know how we did it. My knee was held together by tape, painkillers, and sheer will. But we played like a team possessed. Every guy stepped up. Jalen averaged 20 points. Marcus caught fire from 3. Big Mike dominated the paint. And I just tried to keep us steady, keep us moving forward, keep us believing. The finals. We made it to the finals. The city went crazy. Parade down Main Street even though we hadn't won anything yet. Fans painted their faces, hung banners from buildings, chanted our names. It felt surreal, like I was watching it happen to someone else. The media descended on us like locusts. Every practice was filmed. Every word analyzed. Analysts debated our chances. Odds makers set lines. The world was watching. We were facing a dynasty, a team that had won 2 of the last 3 championships. They had veterans, superstars, a coach who had seen everything. We were the underdogs. Nobody gave us a real chance. But we didn't care. We had come too far to be scared now. Game 1, we lost by 15. They were bigger, faster, more experienced. They made us look like kids. In the locker room after, nobody panicked. Coach said, "We're learning." Game 2, we lost by 8. Closer, but still not enough. We were down 0-2 heading back to our arena, facing elimination in 4 games if we didn't turn it around. My knee was getting worse. The doctor said I needed surgery after the season. Maybe before, if I wanted to be smart about it. I told him smart wasn't an option right now. He said, "You're risking permanent damage." I said, "I'm risking everything every time I step on that court. What's the difference?" Game 3, we came out desperate. We played with an edge we hadn't shown in the first 2 games. Physical, aggressive, refusing to back down. The crowd was electric. We fed off their energy. And we won. By 12. 1 game back. Still alive. Game 4, we won again. By 7. Series tied 2-2. Suddenly the narrative shifted. The media started saying maybe we had a chance. Maybe this wasn't over. My father still hadn't called. My mom texted after every game. Your father is watching. He's nervous. He won't admit it, but I can tell. I didn't respond. I couldn't think about him. Not now. Not when we were this close. Game 5 was back in their arena. A hostile environment, fans screaming, booing every call, throwing garbage on the court during warm-ups. We lost by 3. Heartbreaker. We had a chance to take the lead with a minute left, but I missed a wide-open 3. My knee buckled as I shot. The ball clanged off the back rim. They rebounded, made free throws, won the game. I sat in the locker room after, head in my hands, feeling like I had cost us everything. Jalen sat next to me. He said, "We wouldn't even be here without you. One missed shot doesn't define this series." I nodded, but I didn't believe him. All I could think about was my father watching that shot, shaking his head, confirming everything he ever thought about me. Choker, loser, not clutch when it matters. Game 6 was back home. Win or go home. The building was packed 3 hours before tip-off. I got there early, walked through the empty concourse, soaking in the moment. This could be my last game of the season. Or it could be the game that sent us to Game 7 with a chance to win it all. Everything hung in the balance. We played the best game of our lives. Every possession mattered. Every rebound, every loose ball, every moment of the game felt like life or death. We were down by 10 in the third quarter. I looked at my teammates, saw the exhaustion in their eyes, the doubt creeping in, and I said, "We're not losing this game. Not here. Not tonight." We clawed back. Defense, transition buckets, timely threes. By the start of the fourth, we were down by 2. The crowd was deafening. My knee was screaming, but I couldn't feel it anymore. Adrenaline had taken over. We traded baskets. They'd score. We'd score. Nobody could pull away. With 2 minutes left, the game was tied. Coach called timeout. He looked at me and said, "This is your moment. Not to be a hero, but to be a leader. Trust your guys. Make the right play." I nodded. We huddled up. Jalen put his hand in the center. He said, "On 3. 1, 2, 3, together." We ran a play. I got the ball, drove hard to the basket. 3 defenders collapsed. I kicked it to Marcus in the corner. He shot without hesitation. Swish. We were up by 3. They came down and missed. Big Mike grabbed the rebound. We ran clock. They fouled Jalen with 20 seconds left. He made both. Up by 5. They hit a quick 2. Up by 3. 10 seconds. They fouled me. I went to the line. I made the first. Up by 4. I stepped back, took a breath. The crowd was standing, screaming, willing the ball through the hoop. I shot. It rattled around and fell in. Up by 5. Game over. We won. Series tied 3-3. Game 7 for the championship. The locker room was a blur. Guys crying, hugging, collapsing from exhaustion. We had done it. We had forced a Game 7. One more game. Winner takes all. I sat in front of my locker, too tired to move, too overwhelmed to process what we had just accomplished. My phone buzzed. My mom. "Call me when you can, baby." I waited until I got back to my apartment. I called her. She answered immediately. She was crying. Happy tears. She said, "I'm so proud of you." I said, "Thanks, Mom." She paused. Then she said, "Your father wants to talk to you." My heart stopped. I said, "What?" She said, "He's here. He wants to say something." Before I could respond, I heard his voice. Gruff, uncomfortable, but there. He said, "You played a good game." I didn't know what to say. I said, "Thanks." Silence. Then he said, "I'll be watching Game 7. And then he handed the phone back to my mom. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Not validation, not pride, just a small crack in the wall between us. My mom said, "That's big for him, baby. I know it doesn't sound like much, but that's him trying." I said, "I know, Mom." She said, "Win or lose, he's proud of you. He just doesn't know how to say it." We hung up. I sat in the dark thinking about my father, thinking about Thanksgiving, thinking about every harsh word, every cold look, every moment I felt invisible in his eyes. And I realized something. I had spent my whole life chasing his approval. But tonight, hearing his voice, hearing him acknowledge me, even in that small, awkward way, I realized I didn't need it anymore. I wanted it. I would always want it. But I didn't need it to know I was worthy. Game 7 was 3 days away, the longest 3 days of my life. I rested. I got treatment on my knee. I watched film. I tried not to think about the magnitude of what was coming, but it was impossible. This was everything. The culmination of a lifetime of work, sacrifice, pain, and dreams. The night before the game, I couldn't sleep. I drove to the arena at 2 a.m. I talked my way past security, walked onto the court, and just stood there in the darkness. Tomorrow, this building would be packed. Thousands of people screaming. Millions watching on TV. But right now, it was just me and the silence. I thought about the boy in the driveway, the one my mom talked about, the one who played for the love of the game. I thought about how far I had come, how much I had lost and gained along the way. And I made a promise to that boy. Win or lose tomorrow, I would play with joy. Not anger, not desperation. Joy. Because that's what the game was supposed to be. That's what I had forgotten somewhere along the way. Game day arrived. The city was electric. Every restaurant, every bar, every street corner was buzzing with anticipation. I got to the arena early. My teammates filtered in, faces tight but calm. We knew what we had to do. Coach gave a speech. Short, simple. He said, "No matter what happens today, I'm proud to call you my team. Now let's go take what's ours." The game was everything you could imagine. Back and forth, neither team giving an inch. Every possession felt like the most important possession of our lives. My knee held up, barely. I played through pain I didn't know existed, but I didn't play alone. Jalen was incredible. Marcus was clutch. Big Mike was unstoppable. We played as one. With 10 seconds left, the game was tied. We had the ball. Last possession. Win or go to overtime. Coach called timeout. He drew up a play. It was for me. ISO at the top. Make a play. He looked at me and said, "I trust you. Whatever you decide, I trust you." We broke the huddle. I took the inbound pass. The clock started. 10 seconds. 9. I dribbled to my spot. 8, 7. Defender squared up. 6, 5. I drove right. Another defender came to help. 4, 3. I jumped, not to shoot, but to pass. I found Jalen cutting to the basket. 2. He caught it, went up. 1. The shot left his hands as the buzzer sounded. The ball floated through the air. The arena held its breath. The ball hit the backboard, kissed the rim, and fell through. We won. We won the championship. The building exploded. Confetti, screaming, chaos. My teammates tackled Jalen. I fell to my knees, overcome, tears streaming down my face. We did it. We actually did it. The moment I had dreamed about my entire life, and it was real. Later, after the trophy presentation, after the interviews, after the celebration, I sat alone in the locker room. My phone buzzed. My mom, a video call. I answered. She was crying, smiling, laughing, and next to her, my father. He looked older than I remembered. Tired, but there was something different in his eyes, something I had never seen before. He said, "You did it." I said, "Yeah, we did it." He nodded. Then he said, "I'm sorry." I looked at him, confused. He said, "I'm sorry for making you feel like you had to prove something to me. I'm sorry for not being the father you needed. I'm sorry for letting my own failures become your burden." I didn't know what to say. I just listened. He said, "I watched every game, every single one. And I saw a man out there who didn't quit, who fought through pain and doubt and kept going. That's not something I taught you. That's something you found in yourself, and I'm proud of you. Not because you won, but because of who you became along the way. I felt tears running down my face. I said, "Thanks, Dad. That means everything." He nodded. My mom hugged him. She looked at me through the phone and mouthed, "I love you." I said, "I love you both." We hung up. I sat there for a long time, holding my phone, feeling something I hadn't felt since I was a kid. Peace. Not because I had won a championship, but because I had finally found a way back to the people I loved. And they had found a way back to me. 2 weeks later, after the parade, after the interviews, after the world had moved on to the next story, I flew home to Michigan. I walked into my childhood home, and my father was waiting in the living room. He stood up when he saw me. We looked at each other for a long moment. Then he walked over and hugged me. A real hug. The kind I hadn't gotten from him since I was 6 years old. He said, "I'm proud of you, son." I said, "I know, Dad." He pulled back, looked me in the eyes, and said, "I always have been. I just didn't know how to show it." I nodded. I understood. Some things take a lifetime to heal. But at least we were starting. That Thanksgiving, I sat at the same table, same people, same food. But everything was different. My father raised his glass. He looked at me and said, "To my son, a champion." Not because of a ring, but because he never stopped believing in himself, even when the people who should have believed in him didn't. Everyone raised their glasses. My mom was crying. Keisha was beaming. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged at that table. Not as a disappointment, not as a project, but as a son. Flawed, human, worthy of love. I raised my glass and said, "To family, to forgiveness, to second chances." We drank, we ate, we laughed, and as I looked around that table, I realized something. The championship was incredible, the ring was beautiful. But this, right here, this moment of reconciliation and love, this was the real victory. This was what I had been fighting for all along. I had finally come home.